I've had 3 roommates in my life. 2 were messy and forgettable. The third, he changed everything. I met Ben through a mutual friend who said he needed a place fast. I had a spare room in rent that was too high for one person, so it seemed like a win-win. He moved in 3 days after we met at a bar. Tall, tan, cocky, in that southern guy kind of way. He played baseball in college, worked in construction now, and had this way of speaking like everything was either a joke or a dare. Classic straight dude. At least that's what I thought. The first few weeks were easy. Ben was clean, polite, and mostly kept to himself. He had that hot guy energy that makes people assume he's dumb. But he wasn't. He just didn't say much unless he had something funny or blunt to throw in. We got into a decent routine. Weekday takeout, occasional drinks, the occasional comment about girls he'd dated, or hookups from the bar. I'd learned a long time ago not to let myself get weird about straight roommates. I've been out for years, but I keep it chill, especially around guys like him. I don't give them a reason to get defensive. But then Ben started getting real comfortable. The first time it happened, it was morning. I was in the kitchen, half awake, pouring cereal, when I heard the bathroom door open behind me. I turned around, expecting to see him heading to his room in a towel or something. Nope, dude walked out completely naked. Not a sock, not a towel, not even a yo, heads up. I froze, holding my spoon mid-air like I was in a sitcom. Ben didn't even flinch. Just nodded casually and said, "Morning." Like this was totally normal. Then he walked into his bedroom and shut the door behind him, leaving me standing there wondering if I was hallucinating. I told myself it was a one-off. Maybe he forgot his towel. Maybe he thought I was still asleep. Guys like Ben grew up in locker rooms, right? Maybe nudity didn't mean the same thing to him. But the next morning, he did it again. Same casual strut from the bathroom to his room, still fully naked. Like the hallway was his private runway. This time, he scratched his head and mumbled, "Gotta fix that shower knob," while walking past me. I tried not to stare, but let's be honest. If you've ever lived with someone that hot and that confident, you know how impossible that is. From that point on, it became a pattern. Not every day, but often enough that I stopped believing it was accidental. Ben didn't walk around shirtless. He skipped right to naked. Sometimes after showers, sometimes late at night when grabbing water. There were no apologies, no explanations, just skin and swagger. I didn't know what to make of it. Part of me wanted to believe he was just one of those ultra-comfortable straight dudes who grew up in gyms and never thought twice about it. Another part of me, the one that caught him sneaking glances at me when he thought I wasn't looking, wondered if this was something else. I started noticing things, like how he'd lean in a little too close when we were watching something on the couch, or how his voice got softer when it was just the two of us talking at night, or how he stopped mentioning girls altogether, which was weird considering how often he used to bring them up. One night, we were watching some random Netflix documentary, one of those true crime things that makes you too anxious to sleep afterward. He was sitting on the far end of the couch, legs spread wide like he owned the place, wearing nothing but a pair of black shorts that were way too short to be legal. I was trying not to look at the way his thigh muscles flexed when he laughed. Then, totally out of nowhere, he said, "You ever notice how some guys get weird when another guy's naked?" I blinked. Yeah? He turned his head toward me, eyes calm. "You're not like that." I shrugged, keeping my voice even. "Nah, I'm gay. It'd be weird if I freaked out about a naked guy." Ben didn't react the way I expected. No awkward laugh, no weird tension. He just said, "Cool," and looked back at the TV. But a beat later, he added, "You know I don't care about that, right? That you're gay." I nodded slowly, heart pounding a little harder. "Yeah, I figured." He didn't say anything else. Just stared at the screen, his jaw tight like he was debating something in his head. The air between us changed. I could feel it. I just didn't know what it meant yet. But it wouldn't be long before I found out. Because 2 nights later, Ben didn't just walk around naked. He invited me to his room. And that was the beginning of everything. I didn't go into his room right away. When Ben first said it, "You can come in if you want," he was standing there in the doorway, still damp from his shower, a towel loose around his hips, that same unreadable look on his face. Not flirty, not joking, just steady, like he was waiting to see what I'd do. I froze, halfway down the hall, having just passed by on my way to the kitchen. It was late, past midnight. I was in basketball shorts and a hoodie, earbuds still in from watching YouTube in bed. He said it so casually, like he was asking if I wanted to borrow toothpaste. "Come in if you want." But there was something about the way his hand lingered on the doorknob, how he stepped aside to make space for me to enter, that made it feel heavier. I hesitated, then gave a quick, awkward smile and said, "You good?" He nodded. "Yeah, just couldn't sleep." That alone wasn't weird. He'd been pulling late nights all week, playing Call of Duty or watching TikToks until 2 a.m. But this time, he wasn't in the living room. He wasn't scrolling. He was standing there, towel-clad, like he'd been waiting for me to walk by. I kept walking. I told myself I was being dramatic, overthinking things again. It had to be nothing, but I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, earbuds still in, music forgotten. I kept replaying that look on his face. Calm. Open. Like he wanted me to say yes. 2 nights later, it happened again. Same time. Almost like clockwork. I was brushing my teeth. Door creaked open. Ben leaned against the hallway wall, shirtless this time. Just a pair of gym shorts hanging low on his hips. "You up?" Mouth full of toothpaste. I nodded. He paused, scratched the back of his neck. "Wanna come hang in my room for a bit?" That time, I went. Not because I had some fantasy in mind. Not because I expected anything. I just didn't want to keep wondering what this was turning into. Ben's room was dim. Just the soft glow of a desk lamp in the corner. The bed was unmade, sheets twisted up like he'd been tossing around. His laptop sat open, paused on some dumb YouTube video. He flopped down onto the bed like he owned it, and I guess he did, and patted the mattress beside him. "Sit." So I did. It was quiet. Too quiet. The kind where every movement feels amplified. I kept my eyes on the screen, acting like I was interested in whatever he'd been watching. Ben leaned back on his elbows, his arm brushing mine as he stretched. "You think it's weird that I walk around naked sometimes?" he asked, out of nowhere. I glanced at him. "Honestly?" he nodded. "Yeah," I said. "Kind of," Ben smirked. "Why? You uncomfortable?" The way he asked it wasn't defensive. It was curious. Testing. "No," I said slowly. "But it's not exactly typical." He looked over at me, his mouth twitching into something halfway between a smile and a smirk. "I figured you wouldn't mind." That made my chest tighten. I laughed, trying to shake it off. "What's that supposed to mean?" Ben turned toward me, his face unreadable. "I mean, I've lived with other guys before. I usually hear some dumbass joke or they freak out." "You don't." I shrugged. "Not my thing. Freaking out, I mean." He studied me for a second longer, then looked away, eyes dropping to his hands. "I don't know," he said finally. "Lately I've been thinking about stuff." "What kind of stuff?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Stuff I probably shouldn't talk about." That made something twist in my gut. I didn't press. I just sat there, trying to keep my breathing even while he stared at the floor, like it was going to give him the answers he was looking for. Then, without looking at me, he said, "You ever think maybe you don't know yourself as well as you thought?" That one landed harder than I expected. My pulse picked up, but I kept my voice steady. "Yeah," I said. "I've thought that." Ben glanced at me then, quick and cautious, like he was checking if I meant it. His eyes were softer than I'd ever seen them. And for the first time, I realized that all the little things I'd been trying to ignore, him walking around naked, the lingering stares, the too close moments, maybe they weren't just me projecting. Maybe he felt it too. We didn't say anything else that night. I sat with him for another 15 minutes. He told me about a job site that had gone sideways that week, something about a wrong order on supplies. Normal talk. Safe talk. His voice returned to that familiar joking tone, but something underneath it had cracked. Before I left, I stood up and said, "If you ever want to talk more about whatever that was, I'm around." Ben just nodded. "Thanks, man." That was it. But after that night, things started to shift in ways I couldn't ignore. It was in the way he looked at me in the mornings, like he wanted to say something but didn't. Or the way he started leaving his door open more often, like an invitation. He'd strip off his shirt after work and toss it on the floor, then act like it was no big deal as he stood in the kitchen half naked, hair damp from a shower, eyes flicking up to catch mine. And the nudity? That got bolder. He stopped pretending to grab a towel. Sometimes he'd walk out of the bathroom naked, knowing I was right there in the living room. No towel. No excuse. The first time he looked at me while doing it, really looked, eyes locked with mine. I didn't breathe. He didn't smile. Didn't laugh. Just looked. Then walked past me like nothing happened. But something had. Something was definitely happening now. At first, I thought I was imagining it. The glances. The pauses. The way Ben would let silence stretch out between us like he was trying to say something without saying it. That look he gave me that night. The one that lingered as he walked past me, naked and unapologetic. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And he knew. I know he did. Because the next morning, I caught him watching me while I was making coffee, and instead of turning away like he normally would, he held eye contact just a second too long. It wasn't just casual now. It was deliberate. He didn't say a word, just leaned against the counter in nothing but a towel, sipping water and staring at me over the rim of his glass like we had some kind of unspoken agreement we hadn't talked about yet. I wish I could say I played it cool, that I ignored it or joked it off, but the truth is, I burned. I felt my ears go hot. My hands shook slightly as I poured my coffee. And when I turned to grab the milk from the fridge, I accidentally knocked over a glass and shattered it on the floor. Ben blinked. "You good?" "Yeah," I muttered, kneeling down to grab a paper towel. "Clumsy, that's all." He didn't offer to help. He just stayed there, towel still dangerously low, watching me like I was some puzzle he was trying to figure out. That night, he knocked on my door. I had just finished a shower. I was sitting in bed, laptop open, pretending to be invested in a documentary I wasn't actually watching. I had one of those random Spotify playlists going in the background, low enough that the knock almost got drowned out. I opened the door, expecting him to ask about the Wi-Fi, or maybe if we had more eggs or something. Instead, he was standing there in mesh shorts and a tank top, barefoot, hair damp. "You busy?" I shook my head slowly. "Not really." "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, heart already pounding. He walked in and sat at the edge of my bed, scanning my room like he hadn't been in it a dozen times before. He looked fidgety, which was new. Ben was never nervous. He was the kind of guy who could drop a joke in a silent room and somehow get a laugh. But right now, he looked unsure. "You said something the other night," he said, eyes fixed on the floor. "About not knowing yourself." I nodded, waiting. He swallowed hard. "I think that's me right now." I didn't say anything, just let him talk. Ben leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his hands clasped tight like he was holding himself together. "I've never thought about guys that way," he said. "Not like that, not seriously." Another pause. But then I moved in here, and it's like I started noticing things. About you. About how I feel when you're around. I don't know how to explain it. I'm not even sure what I want. But I know I don't want to pretend like nothing's going on anymore. My throat went dry. Then he looked up at me. "Have you noticed it too? Or am I just completely losing my mind?" There was something about how raw his voice sounded that made me forget about every awkward moment leading up to this. I sat next to him, not too close, but not far either. "You're not crazy," I said. "I've noticed." He let out a breath. His shoulders dropped a little, like he'd been holding them up for weeks. "But I need to know," I added, my voice quiet. "Is this just curiosity?" Because I've been down that road before, guys who want to experiment. Figure stuff out. And that's fine, I get it, but I'm not looking to be someone's test run. Ben turned to face me fully. It's not like that. His voice was firm. Certain. I don't know what I am right now, but I know this isn't just some fantasy. I've been thinking about you all the time. Not just physically. It's like I want to be around you. All the time. And I don't know what that means yet, but it's not nothing. I nodded slowly, trying to breathe past the rush of emotion in my chest. Okay, I said. Then we go slow. A quiet beat passed. Ben gave a small, relieved smile. I can do slow. Then, almost like muscle memory, he reached out and gently touched my knee. And that single touch, it felt bigger than anything else he'd done. Bigger than the nudity, the tension, the half-spoken words. It felt like a real beginning. Neither of us said anything for a minute. Eventually, he stood up, like he didn't want to push it too far, and headed for the door. But before he left, he turned around. Oh, and just so you know, he said with a slight grin, me walking around naked, that wasn't an accident. Then he disappeared down the hall, leaving my room, and my brain completely wrecked. For the next few days, things between us felt lighter. Ben didn't suddenly start calling me cute names or holding my hand while we walked to the corner store. That wasn't him. And honestly, that wasn't me either. But there was a shift, something quiet but constant, like we'd stopped walking in circles and finally started walking towards something. The morning after our conversation, he didn't avoid me. In fact, he walked into the kitchen completely naked. Again. But this time, he looked at me a little differently. Not like he was trying to provoke me. Not like it was a dare. Just calm, confident, almost soft. I was standing there drinking my coffee, still groggy from a late night, and he leaned against the counter, arms crossed over his chest, not even pretending to be modest. You ever get tired of pretending things don't affect you? He asked. It caught me off guard. What do you mean? Ben tilted his head slightly, the corner of his mouth twitching into a lopsided smile. You keep it cool all the time. Never let on when you're thrown. But I see it. I raised an eyebrow. You see what? The way you tense up when I'm close. The way your eyes flick down when I walk past. It's subtle, but I notice. I didn't answer right away. Because he wasn't wrong. I'd been trying so hard to play it safe. To not let myself want too much, too fast. To protect myself from the possibility that all of this could unravel as quickly as it started. Okay, I said finally, meeting his gaze. Yeah, it affects me. You affect me. Ben smiled. Really smiled. And that alone knocked the wind out of me. Good, he said. I was hoping I wasn't the only one. That night, he asked if I wanted to hang in his room again. We sat on his bed, shoulder to shoulder, playing some stupid video game neither of us was really focused on. He kept dying in the same spot, and I kept laughing at him for it. He started nudging me with his elbow every time I said something smartass, and by the third time, he didn't stop nudging. He just let his arm stay there, pressed against mine. There was a point where we both stopped pretending we cared about the game. The controller dropped to his lap, the screen flashing some game over text we ignored. We were sitting there, silent, and the air between us felt charged again. But not like before. This time, it wasn't about confusion or doubt. This time, it felt like a decision. He turned toward me slowly, his knee brushing against mine, his hand resting just close enough to touch. And then he said, "Can I do something?" I nodded. He leaned in, hesitant, slower than I expected, and kissed me. Not forcefully, not like he was trying to prove something, just soft, intentional, warm. My breath caught. My heart was slamming against my ribs, but the moment his lips met mine, everything went still. It wasn't fireworks, it wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, grounded, real. And that, somehow, made it even more intense. When he pulled back, he kept his forehead resting lightly against mine. "I've never kissed a guy before," he whispered. I smiled. Could have fooled me. That made him laugh, the tension breaking just enough to breathe again. He shook his head, and flopped back onto the bed, one arm behind his head, staring up at the ceiling. "I don't know what I'm doing," he said, "but I know I don't want this to stop." I lay back beside him, mirroring his posture. Our arms brushed again, and this time, he reached over and laced his fingers with mine. "Then don't," I said. We stayed like that for a while, quiet, still, fingers intertwined, sharing warmth and space and something that hadn't quite formed into words yet. It wasn't about labels or expectations. Not right then. It was just about him, me, the shared silence, the electricity under our skin. Before I left his room that night, he walked me to the door, still shirtless, still casual, and as I stepped into the hallway, he said, "Hey, next time, you don't have to go back to your room." I turned back. "You sure?" He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed again. "I'm not walking around naked for just anyone, you know." I laughed, shaking my head, already trying to calm my racing thoughts. This was happening. It was real. And the way he looked at me in that moment, it told me everything I needed to know. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because anything happened. We didn't go there, not yet, but because I couldn't shut my brain off. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling like my body had been rewired. Like every inch of me was still humming from the kiss, from the way his fingers had curled into mine, from the way he'd said I didn't have to leave. It wasn't just lust. It wasn't about him being hot. Though yeah, he absolutely was. It was the way he'd looked at me after. Like kissing me didn't confuse him. It calmed him. Like he was finally letting himself want something he'd been resisting for a long time. The next morning was quiet. I got up first, out of habit, and made coffee like always. I didn't expect anything. Didn't want to push. I figured maybe we'd talk later, or maybe it would be awkward. I was bracing for that, honestly. But when Ben came out of his room, it wasn't awkward. He was in boxers and a hoodie, hair still messy, rubbing sleep out of his eyes like always. But when he saw me, he smiled. Not a big smile. Just enough to let me know we were good. He came over, grabbed his mug, and poured himself some coffee, bumping his shoulder into mine on the way to the fridge. No words. Just that. And that small gesture said everything I needed to hear. The day passed like any other. He went to work at the site. I had a couple design projects to finish. But we kept texting. Just stupid stuff. Memes, short one-liners, a picture of a dog that looked like our neighbor's nightmare Pomeranian. It was the kind of texting that was totally meaningless on the surface, but absolutely loaded underneath. And that night, I didn't hesitate when he asked me to come to his room. I brought my laptop and a blanket. We watched something dumb on Netflix. I don't even remember what. It was just background noise. Ben was stretched out beside me, lying on his stomach, his bare shoulder brushing against my leg. I tried to keep my eyes on the screen, but every now and then, I'd feel his gaze drift toward me. Just quick glances, like he was trying to memorize this version of us. Eventually, he said, "Can I ask you something?" I looked down at him. "Of course." "Did you always know you liked guys?" I nodded. "Yeah. Pretty much." I didn't always have the words for it, but I knew. Ben shifted, rolling onto his side so he could see me better. I didn't. Not even close. I waited, letting him take his time. He picked at the edge of the blanket, his brow furrowed. I always thought I was just normal, like regular straight guy stuff, girls, locker room talk, that whole vibe. I leaned into it hard, you know? I didn't say anything, just listened. "And then I moved in with you," he said. "And at first, it was nothing. I mean, yeah, you were attractive, but I just figured I was noticing things the way anyone notices when someone's hot. No big deal." His voice dropped a little. "But then I started thinking about you, like, a lot. And not just in a, weird thought kind of way. In a real way. Like I'd catch myself wondering what you were doing. Wondering what you'd look like without a shirt on. Wondering how it would feel to sit closer, or touch your hand, or..." He cut himself off and looked down. "I don't know what that makes me." I reached out and put my hand over his. "You don't have to label it," I said gently. "You don't owe anyone that. least of all me. Ben looked at me, his eyes sharp but vulnerable. Yeah, but it feels like I owe myself an answer. That'll come, I said. You're figuring it out, that's allowed. He nodded slowly, like he was still trying to believe me. We sat there in silence for a bit. Then he said, "Can I kiss you again?" I smiled. You don't have to ask. This kiss was different, longer, deeper, less cautious. His hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer, and I let him. I leaned into it, feeling the tension in his shoulders melt. He kissed me like he was trying to make sense of everything he'd been bottling up. And in return, I kissed him like I wanted to show him there was nothing wrong with the way he felt. When we finally broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. His breathing was heavier, and his eyes stayed closed for a beat too long. "I haven't felt like this in a long time," he whispered. "Like what?" He opened his eyes. "Safe." That hit me like a punch to the chest. "Then stay here tonight," I said. "Just sleep, no pressure, just stay." He nodded. We climbed under the blanket. I lay on my back. He curled on his side facing me, his arm brushing mine. The room was quiet except for the distant city noise outside and the sound of our breaths slowly syncing up. He didn't say anything else, but about 10 minutes later, I felt his hand find mine again under the blanket. No words, just fingers interlacing in the dark, and we slept like that. Two guys, two friends, one bed, and a silence that felt more intimate than anything words could offer. The morning after he slept in my bed, things weren't awkward, and that surprised me. I've had mornings like that before, where the night before felt like magic, and then you wake up to cold silence and a guy who's suddenly rethinking everything. But this wasn't that. Ben woke up slowly, stretching, his hands still loosely tangled with mine under the blanket. The sunlight creeping through the curtains painted soft lines across his bare shoulder, and he looked over at me with a sleepy half smile that made my chest ache in a way I wasn't used to. "Hey," he said, voice low and rough. "Hey," I replied. He sat up and rubbed his face. Then, without saying anything, he leaned down and kissed my forehead. Just once. Quick, but it felt like a goddamn earthquake. Then he stood up, scratched his stomach, and walked, still naked, into the kitchen like it was just another Tuesday. And I just lay there for a second, trying to process the fact that I had a half-naked maybe boyfriend who kissed me good morning and made terrible coffee. That should have been a perfect morning. But the thing is, life doesn't stay in the apartment. It's easy when it's just us. When the door's closed, and it's our tiny bubble of honesty and warmth and tentative intimacy. But once the outside world creeps in, things get complicated real fast. It started later that afternoon. We were both off. Rare for a weekday, so we decided to grab lunch at this spot near campus. It was sunny. One of those weirdly warm spring days that shows up too early and makes you think maybe life isn't so bad. We walked there together, side by side, shoulders brushing. He didn't reach for my hand or anything, and I didn't expect him to. I knew better than that, but part of me still wanted it, even just a look, a glance that said what we were, even if no one else knew. Inside the restaurant, everything changed. He kept his distance. Didn't sit too close, didn't meet my eyes the way he had the night before. When the waitress came over and smiled at him, just a flirty, harmless thing, I saw something in his posture shift. He straightened up, put on that bro voice I hadn't heard in weeks, the one that used to make me roll my eyes, the one he hadn't needed around me since that first kiss. "Yeah, just a burger," he said, flashing her a polite smile. She laughed and tossed her hair, coming right up. As she walked away, he didn't look at me, and I suddenly felt very cold. We ate, we talked. It wasn't totally weird, but it wasn't what it had been either. He wasn't being rude, just careful, measured, and it stung more than I expected. On the walk home, I didn't say much, neither did he. When we got to our block, he finally broke the silence. "You okay?" I nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just tired." He stopped walking. "Are you sure?" I looked at him. His eyes were searching mine, and I could tell he already knew the answer. I sighed. You don't have to pretend for me. I get it. Pretend what? That nothing's changed. Ben frowned. I'm not pretending nothing's changed. I don't know how to be this out there, around people. I've never done it before. I looked down at the sidewalk. I'm not asking you to announce it to the whole restaurant, but when you pull away like that, it makes me feel like I'm some secret you're trying to hide. He ran a hand through his hair. You're not a secret, then what am I? The question hung there. Heavy. Honest. He looked at me for a long time, his jaw clenched, and I could see him wrestling with himself, trying to figure out the right thing to say. But he didn't answer. Not really. Instead, he said, Can we just go back home? So we did, but the silence between us didn't go away. That night, he didn't ask me to come to his room, and I didn't knock on his door. We both stayed in our separate spaces, lights glowing under our door frames, like two people trying to live separate lives in a space that had once felt shared. It wasn't a fight. Not really. But it felt like something was breaking. I didn't sleep much, and when I woke up the next morning, I found him in the kitchen, dressed for work, coffee already made, bag slung over his shoulder. He looked at me for a beat, then said, I'm gonna be late. We'll talk tonight, okay? I nodded. Okay. But I didn't know what kind of conversation was waiting for me when he got back. That day dragged like hell. I tried to work, tried to edit a logo set I'd been meaning to finish, but my brain wouldn't stay on the page. Every few minutes I'd find myself glancing at the clock, wondering where he was, what he was thinking, whether he was going to come back with answers or excuses. I told myself not to expect anything, that this kind of thing never ends the way you want it to, that I'd let it get too far, let myself hope too hard. That's on me. But I still waited, even when I told myself not to. The door opened around 6:30. I heard his boots hit the floor, the creak of the coat hook, the sound of keys dropping into the bowl by the door. All those little domestic noises that had started to feel like comfort. I didn't get up right away. A moment later, he knocked lightly on my door. I opened it, and there he was. Ben. Same hoodie, same smudges of dried sawdust on his jeans, same tired eyes. But something in his expression was different. Not distant, not closed off. He looked nervous. Can we talk? He asked. I nodded and stepped aside, letting him into my room. He sat on the edge of the bed like he had that first night. Back straight, hands resting on his knees, eyes not quite meeting mine yet. I leaned against the dresser, arms crossed. The silence between us stretched. Then he said, I'm sorry. It caught me off guard. I don't know what I'm doing, he continued, but I know I messed up yesterday. I stayed quiet, letting him speak. I panicked, he said, at the restaurant. It was like, the second I felt eyes on us, I just shut down. I slipped back into that version of me that I thought I'd left behind, the one who doesn't ask questions, who doesn't let anyone see what's really going on. He looked up at me now, really looked, but I don't want to be that guy anymore. I didn't move, didn't say a word. I could feel the walls inside me holding, waiting, wanting. He stood up and stepped closer. You're not a secret, he said softly. You never were. I just didn't know how to deal with the fact that I care about someone in a way I wasn't taught was okay. My arms dropped. Slowly. Ben took another step, now standing close enough that I could smell the faint scent of sawdust and sweat and the cheap bar soap he always used. You said something yesterday, he said. You asked what you are to me. He swallowed, eyes locked with mine. You're the first person who's made me feel like I can actually be seen. Like I don't have to fake it or perform or keep walls up. I don't know what label fits me, and I don't care right now. I just know that when I'm with you, I feel like myself. I exhaled. A slow, trembling breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I don't need you to be anything you're not, I said. I know, he said. That's why I'm standing here. Another beat passed. Then he reached out and took my hand. No hesitation this time. No testing the waters. He just held it. And that simple act felt louder than all the noise in my head. I want this, he said. Whatever it is, I want to figure it out. With you. My heart kicked hard in my chest. Then let's figure it out, I said. He smiled. That slow, crooked grin that always made me forgive him too easily. Then he pulled me into a hug. A real one. Arms wrapped tight. Cheek pressed against my shoulder, like he'd been needing it all day. And I wrapped mine around him too, letting my chin rest on his shoulder, my eyes shut. He didn't let go for a long time. That night, he didn't just ask me to stay. He held the blanket open for me and waited until I crawled in beside him. No jokes, no bravado, just warmth, just him. When the lights were out, he shifted closer and whispered, I want to wake up next to you tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that too. I turned my head, met his eyes in the dark. You will. He smiled, and for the first time since this all started, I knew it wasn't going to be a secret, not anymore. It's wild how fast things can change once the fear is gone. Not that everything with Ben became easy overnight. It didn't. But the second he stopped trying to hide, the second he admitted out loud that what was happening between us was real, everything started to settle into place. We didn't make some big announcement. There wasn't a grand coming out moment. No Facebook status change. No dramatic declarations. We didn't need that. But we did start doing the little things. He started sitting closer in public. Stopped adjusting his posture when someone looked at us for too long. Started letting his hand brush mine when we walked back from the grocery store. Just a little touch. Barely noticeable, but to me, it was everything. One night, we were at a mutual friend's party. It was the usual crowd, people who knew us as roommates, who assumed we were just two straight guys sharing a place to save on rent. The kind of people who joked about who'd bring the hottest girl or chug the most beer. Not the kind who talked about feelings. We weren't planning on telling anyone that night, but about halfway through, someone made a casual joke about setting me up with a girl from their office. Ben laughed it off, but then glanced at me and said, Nah, he's taken. The conversation froze for half a second, like someone had hit pause. Then the guy just shrugged and said, Ah, cool. And that was it. Ben reached for his beer again like nothing had happened, but I saw the way his hand trembled for a second before he steadied it. Like saying it out loud took more out of him than he expected. Later that night, back at our place, I pulled him into the kitchen while he was still mid-bite of leftover pizza. You good? I asked. He chewed, swallowed, and nodded. That wasn't planned, he said. Just felt like the right time. It was. He smiled. I've never said anything like that before, he admitted. Not in front of other people. You did good. Ben set the plate down and stepped closer. You make it easier, he said. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, looking up at him. I'm not doing anything. You are, though, he said. You're showing me it's okay to just be. He was quiet for a beat, then added, I'm not ashamed anymore. I was scared. But not ashamed. I nodded, feeling something warm expand in my chest. Then he took my face in his hands and kissed me, right there in our tiny kitchen, under the dim, flickering light bulb that had needed replacing for weeks. And it felt like home. We didn't need to move fast. We still had things to figure out. He still had questions. I still had hesitations. But there was this deep, grounded trust between us now. The kind that came from all the moments we'd shared before we even realized what they meant. We kept our rituals. Ben still walked around the apartment naked sometimes, only now he'd shoot me a look after, like, yeah, you like that? And laugh when I told him to put on pants before I burned breakfast. We still sat on the couch late at night, legs touching, his head on my shoulder when he got too tired to keep pretending he was winning at FIFA. We were still us, just more honest, more open, more together. And now, when he walks past me naked on the way from the shower, I don't freeze or look away. I just smile. Because that same confident, slightly cocky, maybe a little clueless guy the first once thought was totally straight, he's mine now. And every day since, He keeps proving just how not straight he really is.